Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Battle Gamer, and we are back with another archetype from Dark Archive. Whew, almost dropped the ball on that one. And I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited because the channel is nearly at 1,000 subscribers. It's been crazy. I honestly didn't think the channel was gonna do this well. And ever since pretty much rebranding to Pathfinder, we've done this in almost a year, which is nuts. Crazy. So I just wanted to thank you all for this. We're currently 13 subscribers from the time of recording this. We'll be more than definitely less than 10 by the time most of you watch this channel, and maybe even there. Who knows? I don't for sure. It's been a crazy ride up until this point. So yes, today we're going to be talking about the Time Mage, one of, I would say, the premier archetypes from Dark Archive. So let's get into Time Mage a little bit here. The Time Mage is a spellcaster of some variety that is completely dedicated to the manipulation and the sensing, I guess, of time. Now, there's a lot of narratives that can go into this, and not only that, but time magic is not as strong as it might imply. Time magic only ever really allows one to either stop time or to get some kind of precognition effect or the ability to, fast forward yourself or slow it down. It never can go back in time. There's no magic that allows for anyone to go back in time, at least at this point in Pathfinder, and I'm pretty sure at no point in Pathfinder, as that would be nonsensical, to say the least. But one of the things about it that is really interesting is time is a powerful effect, I think most people agree, that isn't innately directed towards dealing damage. So a lot of what the Time Mage does is predominantly using time spells in some way. Now, before we get into the archetype dedication itself, if you're liking this video so far, please leave a like, and if you want to see more like it, subscribe, as we are getting close to that 1,000 mark, as I said. And we're doing actually a lot of really cool things here on the channel. In fact, if you want to be a part of that in the near future, go down to the description where our Discord is linked, where we talk all things tabletop, including Warhammer 40k, as well as I always recruit there first for any of my games. So if you want a chance to play with me and my friends, that's the place to be. And if you want something a little less committal than that, you can follow me on Twitter, where I talk about everything that's currently going on, and I also give some, various commentary here and there whenever I get a chance. I'm really bad at Twitter, okay? So you guys are just going to have to... I'm getting better, I promise. Anyway, let's look at Time Mage. Alright, so getting into Time Mage, first I just want to read off some of the additional feats that come with the dedication itself. I'm looking at it right here because I'm never going to remember all of this, so if it bleaches out my face, I apologize. But at 10th level, you can pick up the Read Disaster feat, which is from the Advanced Player's Guide. You can pick up Quickened Casting, You can pick up Quickened Casting from the core rulebook, and that's at level 12. And at 16th level, you can pick up Plot the Future from the Advanced Player's Guide. And at 20th level, you can pick up Echoing Spell, which is also from the Advanced Player's Guide. So a bunch of these are just archetype feats, or not archetype feats. They're actually kind of all over the place. These feats are generally just time-related or precognition-based feats that fit with the Time Mage, and it just gives you more options. You can very easily take Time Mage from level 2, or well, I guess level 6, because technically you can't pick up Time Mage until 6th level, up until level 20. Now, the Time Mage is uncommon, so feel free. Most of the time, players will be able to access Time Mage, and honestly, GMs out there, don't worry, Time Mage does not really offer anything that powerful that the players probably couldn't already get their hands on by more, not uncommon means. So I wouldn't worry about it. This is a pretty easy archetype to get into, and the prerequisites for the archetype is that you have a spell casting class feature. Now, this is something I really want to emphasize because this isn't a prerequisite of you're capable of casting spells. You must have a spell casting class feature, which means only characters who innately have access to spell casting, which is, bards, clerics, sorcerers, wizards, witches, I almost said warlock there for a second, oracle, or, whatever spellcasters are in the game, those are the only ones that can ever pick up Time Mage. So you can't pick up Time Mage if you're not a native spellcaster. But there is a time-based one, the Chrono Skimmer, for the non-casters, which we'll get to in the next video, tomorrow, probably. Prerequisites aside, the Time Mage there's a bunch of text here, but really it's not all too much. More or less, you get access to the focus spell, delay consequences, which allows you to, as a reaction with a focus point, delay damage for 1 round, so essentially until the beginning of that creature's next turn, because that's how rounds work. You will be able to postpone any damage in effects until the spell, runs its course. You can also optionally dismiss this spell for whatever reason. I don't know why you ever would. Now, it has a range of 30 feet, and it's a good spell overall. Also, you get a focus point from the Archetype dedication, and I really like this part. In the Archetype dedication, if it says that for whatever reason you get access to this focus spell, because it is a domain spell from the time domain, obviously, it says you can retrain out of it into another feat or another domain spell, which I find is hilarious. They're not saying you can instead pick another domain spell. No. The game is telling you can retrain that one out. So you actually have to spend some downtime and some money, potentially, based on how you play it, to retrain out of it. I think it's just funny how they just kind of just blandly you can retrain out of it. And that's it. They also get access to a cantrip that is new here to Dark Archive. You get access to Time Sense, which is a cantrip that more or less... So it's actually a really interesting cantrip. So it's a 1-action verbal cantrip. And you can use it in a lot of different ways, based on some skill proficiency. I mean, I'm going to put up here, you can read it. But more or less what it boils down to, the exact time down to the minute, second, whatever. Not only that, but if you're aware of the area that you're in enough, you know what day of the calendar that country uses, if you're familiar with its calendar. If you are trained in astronomy lore, then you know what, certain astrological events are going to happen in the near future, or the closest ones in proximity, if there are any. And it also does have a combat benefit, which is pretty good. You get a +1 circumstance or status. I'm pretty sure it's status, yes. You get a +1 status bonus to your next attack roll, perception check, skill check, or there's one other one. Saving throw you take on the same turn you cast Time Sense that requires extremely precise timing. If you choose to gain this bonus, you can't do so again for 1 hour. So it's a +1 status bonus that you can essentially evoke for 1 action is not bad. Now, the whole precise timing thing, you could argue that, precise timing jumping out of a fireball to get a bonus to your reflex saving throw, or precise timing to strike an enemy when he's at their most vulnerable, is obviously technically precise timing. Honestly, if you're a DM, don't overly, the player gets a +1 to one of these checks in that round or in that turn. So that's actually until the end of the initiative, which is interesting. It's not until the beginning of your next turn. So that's actually interesting. I don't know. I'll probably make it to the beginning of the next turn just to make it easier. But a +1 status bonus, no big deal. Guidance kind of does a lot of the same thing anyway. And yeah, it's overall a good cantrip. And you get both the focus spell and the cantrip with the dedication feat picking up. Overall, not bad. Not the best dedication Archetype dedication I've seen, but it's still pretty good. Gives you a focus point, gives you a focus spell, and access to a cantrip and one cantrip that's new to this book. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Oh, yes, I also forgot. Your focus spell and your cantrip are considered both from the tradition of which you use to get the prerequisites for this archetype. So obviously, whatever class you are, whatever spellcasting tradition you follow, these spells fall under that tradition. Leave it to Time Mage to put in a 15-letter word as a feat. Chrono cognizance, and I can't believe I said that correctly the first time. I did say it the first time. You can't prove otherwise. Chrono cognizance is essentially it's a skill feat, which is really cool. Now, it does require that you're a master in perception, which is interesting. I don't know if there's any spellcasters that get master in perception until, like, I don't know, maybe level 13, 15, maybe even 17. I don't know. That's very interesting. That's very strange, in my opinion. But regardless, it is a interesting skill feat to say the least. Now, as I've been mentioning in some of my other videos, especially because a lot of the archetypes from Dark Archive have skill feats in them, which I really love, this is an archetype skill feat. So if you have a class that takes specific skill feats from specific skills, these skills do not apply. You can only pick up archetype skill feats when you normally can select skill feats for your character that are more general. Not general feats, or general skill feats, or general feats, yeah, but general skills, obviously. Right, Chrono cognizance. It is a skill feat that allows you to essentially know when there is a time effect in your presence. You are aware when a character is slowed or quickened in any form or fashion, and you're aware when you're in the proximity of some kind of temporal effect. Now, that's not to say that you understand what these temporal effects are, just that you recognize them. One of the cool things about this feat, though, is that if you're a legendary in any of the primary skills for traditions, arcana, religion, nature, occultism, in any of them, if a character uses time stop, you are aware of all actions they do during the course of the spell, but you are still unable to act during that time, which I think is really cool. It's nothing I mean, I could see probably something happen. If a GM's using time stop against you, that's, I don't know, it's really rough. But regardless of that, I think it's really cool to have that kind of ability. It would be shocking to whoever did it to have your character be able to know what happened when time was stopped. Yes, that was a JoJo's reference. I've sunk so low. Anyway, so yeah, Chrono cognizance. It's not a bad skill feat overall. Chronomancer's secret is the first feat of several that I'm going to just tell you right now. There's a lot of spells given in all these archetype feat, or in a lot of these archetype feats, and I don't got the time to literally read them all out to y'all, so I will be putting them up on screen. The only ones I'll be talking about are the ones that are unique to this archetype dedication, or the ones that were unique or that were mentioned in the archetype dedication feat itself, as I felt that's important, as it will be the first, few spells that you pick up from the Chrono Mage. But let's go ahead and talk about the Chronomancer's secret. So you gain access to one of two focus spells. You either gain access to the Stasis Domain spell from the Time Domain, and I'm going to put it up here for 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. And then you gain access to Path of Least Resistance, which is a unique focus spell that is just unique to this archetype alone. So let's look at it here real quick. Path of Least Resistance is a somewhat complicated spell, so I'm going to open it up here in front of myself so I don't get anything wrong. It is a really cool spell, though, because it's a single action verbal spell. And what happens is you pick 3 locations that you could stride to with 2 stride actions. So 2 stride actions, you pick 3 locations, and each of those locations can be no farther than 20 feet from the other 2 locations. So if you imagine like a triangle, none of the angles can be, or none of the sides can be more than 20 feet. of where your character can end up. And not only that, the essential image of the spell is you're going through a number of iterations in a pre-cognizant kind of divine spell or divination spell that allows you to avoid anything, unnecessary or that are harmful to you. Now, what is interesting about the spell is that it works very strangely, and this is a very complicated spell. But let me try to dumb it down so that it makes more sense to everyone. So essentially, you pick these 3 locations. Now, if any of those locations would cause you to go through a trap, well, okay. First of all, I guess I should mention, the GM then randomly determines which location you end up at. But if any of the routes that you took would take you through a dangerous, like a trap or any kind of hazardous situation, that one is not included in the random results. Now, if all of them take you through a dangerous trap in some form or another, then the DM just randomly determines which one you go to as normally. Now, the good thing about this spell, and honestly the biggest thing that I would take from this spell, I don't know why they made this spell this way. It's way overly complicated for what its major effect is. You get 2 strides as a single action focus spell, and the movement doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. That's it. That's all they had to make this spell actually do. This isn't even flavor text. They had to give you 3 locations, and they're determined randomly, and if there happens to be a trap, which there's not many in combat anyway, you can avoid it. Now, I can see a situation, excuse me, if you can't tell, my voice has been struggling a bit after doing all these videos. I can see a situation where if there's 3 hallways and there's traps down 2 of them, some kind of maniacal dungeon layout, this is a good way as a focus point to essentially get through the traps, as hopefully anyway one of the paths is safe at least. And I think that's good. And in combat, this is very good because you get to stride twice for an action and it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. This is the GTFO of focus spells. It's really good. And the good thing about Chronomancer's secrets overall as a feat is that if you pick up this feat, you can do so again to pick up the other focus spell, and you get another focus point when you do that. So this is a pretty reliable way to pick up focus points for your Chronomancer spells. But trust me, there will be more. Future spell learning is a good feat, especially depending on the tradition that you belong to. Now, time magic traditionally is either cultic or arcane innately. I'm sure there are some time-space spells that are divine. I mean, after all, there is a time domain for magic spells. But future spell learning essentially adds new spells to your spell list that you can then pick from as per normal when you level up as a spellcaster. Now, you can add Behold the Weave, which I'll put up here for about 3 seconds. 2, 1. Cast into Time from Secrets of Magic. 3, 2, 1. Haste, I'm not even going to put up. You already know what Haste does. Haste is a really good spell. Loose Time's Arrow from this book, so I'm going to do this again. 3, 2, 1. And Quicken Time, as well as Slow, again, another spell that I feel is pretty infamous enough that you all know what it does. And Stagnate Time, which I'm going to go ahead and... Alright, you got all those? Great. These get added to your spell list. You can pick them up whether you're a repertoire caster, whether you're a prepared spellcaster. If you're a wizard, these are not added to your spell book directly. These are just the spells you can take as you level up as spell options, more or less. That's it. That's essentially the potential of this one. If you're like a divine caster, this is really good. Gives you more access to more spells. And honestly, I don't know. If you need to pick this one up to get access to some of these spells, then it's a really good archetype feat. If not, then it's probably not as good of an archetype feat. This next feat is wonderful. This next feat is essentially... This is why I love Paizo, right? They come up with the best spells. So, what could have been? It's not a spell, per se. This is a metamagic you can apply to a summoning spell. When you use this metamagic, the summoning spell summons an alternate reality version of yourself as the intended creature. Whether it is a natural creature, whether it's a troll, whether it's an elemental, it has your mannerisms, similar features, similar tattoos, or even your same clothing, which I absolutely love. I love the aesthetic for this one so much. You just like I summon myself as a troll, and the troll comes up and he's wearing a top hat and a monocle because of course you do. Who wouldn't wear a top hat and monocle, right? So what does this actually do? This one does some unique features, but I don't really like this feat in practice as much as I absolutely love the theory of it. So if you are trained in the so what happens is this alters the proficiency bonuses, I guess, the creature gets to some skills. If you are trained in the skill, it gets a +1. If you're expert, +2, master +3, and legendary +4. If you're not trained in any of in any of its native skills, it gets a -2 to those skills. That is pretty rough, mostly because, as a squishy wizard, you kind of want to pick a troll that can manhandle your enemies. But because it's a different version of you, it's kind of a scrawnier, weaker troll because you're probably not trained in athletics. And if you are, probably not by that much. So, yeah, this one is interesting. I think this one is really good for Summoner, actually, specifically, because Summoner shares their same proficiencies with their Eidolon. So Summoner, unlike other spellcasters, actually has more of a reason to put proficiency skill ranks into things like athletics and stuff like that, because it's shared with their Eidolon, who has a different attribute layout and is probably much stronger than the Summoner in question. This allows the Summoner to create summons that are potentially really good at things like fainting or using athletic skill checks or whatever. But again, honestly, I would use this just because it would be funny to see, a flame elemental walk in with a cane and top hat and monocle, because of course you have a cane, top hat, and monocle. Into the Future is a very interesting meta magic that this archetype gives you. So more or less what it does is this meta magic is an action, and if your next action is to cast a 1 or 2 action spell, you throw that spell into the next round. Now, you still cast the spell this round using those 2 actions, which do provoke attacks of opportunity, even though the spell's effects do not go off until next round, and this does not prevent you from being disrupted or anything in this way. At the beginning of your next turn, the spell then goes off, and that's essentially what this feat does. You might be asking, why is that useful? Why would I even want that? Well, dear viewer, let me tell you, this is actually a ridiculously powerful meta magic because it can combo spells. Because the effects of the spell do not come into effect until the start of your next turn, whatever effects that's going to happen to that creature will be happening right during the start of your turn. Now, you do have to determine the specific creature or specific area the spell will go off when you make the initial casting, and if for whatever reason you're unable to get line of sight, line of effect, or the creature is no longer eligible for this spell, then this meta magic fails, and I think you lose the spell. But if they don't, this allows you to make some really interesting spell combinations. If you're an occult spellcaster, like the Bard or Psychic, for instance, you know what really, really sucks for certain enemies? When their willpower gets dumped by fear or by the frightened status effect, because it makes them weaker against your spells that affect their mind, and those spells are pretty dirty. And you know what you can do with this? You can cast fear on a creature. It goes off at the beginning of your turn. They roll their save. They either have Frightened 1 if they succeed, or Frightened 2 if they fail, Frightened 3 if they crit fail. And yeah, then that turn, you can then cast a spell that they would be very weak to. And not only that, but if you were to do this normally, right, if you were to not use this meta magic, you cast Fright Fear on the creature. it would get a turn. Even if it was frightened 2, it would reduce it down to frightened 1. And if it was frightened 1, it would just not be frightened by the time your next turn comes around. This is really good for comboing spells, and I'm sure there's any list of number of ways you could combo spells. Being able to activate a spell and another spell in quick succession could be really good. I mean, when you affect a troll with a fire-based spell, its regeneration is reduced for a round. So whatever other spell you do that might not be fire-based will not be right away healed with regeneration. Just saying. There's a lot of ways. Weakness, space spells. This is a really good feat. Purge of Moments is a very interesting ability. And let me double check something here real quick. Yeah, okay. So essentially for 3 actions, you fast forward your own personal timeline. And everyone can see that for you personally, time is happening in quick succession, even though, no one can really do anything about it, right? And maybe they might have a reaction, but I don't know what reaction could apply to this. And yeah, 5 rounds pass for you over the course of your turn, essentially, or of your active turn here. And you can do this once per hour. So if you're affected by like some kind of effect that lasts for a certain number of rounds, then you purge through those rounds and you can't really do anything because you don't do those actions. Whatever effects happen to you, but it's considered that you're taking no actions during this time. So let's say if you're confused for a D4 rounds and it just happened to be like 3 rounds or something, you could purge those 3 rounds and all you'd have to waste is 1 round, which is a net gain, honestly. If you're suffering from persistent effects, you do have to roll for every round, so you could take a lot of damage based on what could happen, and you might not be able to stop it if it gets really bad, but you can do it, and there's a large list of other reasons why this particular effect could be good. And you can do this once per hour. It doesn't use a spell slot, not a focus point, nothing. So overall, this is a good effect to have in your pocket when you need it, because honestly, there's a lot of situations where these kind of effects could be used. If your character becomes frightened 4, which is something that can happen in the late game easily, you can burn through all your frightened 4 rounds at just the cost of 1 round, which is really good. There's, again, a lot of these spells are purely based on how well you as a spellcaster can use these spells or feats. This is a feat, not a spell. So overall, this is a good feat, but you have to be able to think ahead to use it correctly. Timeline splitting spell is so cool. I absolutely love this spell. It's not a spell. It's a spell casting effect. And let's see here. You can only do this once per day. But for 3 actions, you cast 2 spells of 1 or 2 actions. Now, you go through the effects of these spells, the creature will make its saves, or you'll make your damage rolls, whatever. And after everything is determined, you pick which spell effect is reality, or the future you choose, and which one becomes a distant memory. This is a really good effect, and it allows you to essentially determine whether if you want to use a spell that is one of the very few rare ones that is save or suck kind of situation, where if they save, nothing happens to them. If they fail, it's a really good effect. Like, that kind of spell can be paired up with another spell. The only restriction is that you can't pick 2 spells of different heightened, 2 of the same spell from different heightened levels. Yeah, you can't pick the same spell heightened to 2 different levels. For whatever reason, I guess. Technically, you could take the same spell twice. It doesn't say different spell levels, or it only says different spell levels. So it kind of becomes advantage on the check, kind of. Yeah, that's kind of strong. Now, it is balanced though, right? Because if you're using focus points or whatever the spell you don't choose to go through's resource cost is, spell slots, focus points, whatever, or those resources are gone. You essentially cast 2 spells at once and only get one of their effects. Now, this is a really good one because you get to pick one, and this makes your turns a little bit more value. You can pair up high-level spells with low-level spells, as long as they're not the same spell, to, make it so that either you get a really, really good effect or at least something with not a major resource loss as low-level spell slots, especially at level 18 are a dime a dozen. You never use like all your first level spots when you get to level 18 because like why would you, right? But this one is overall really good. And like I said, even if you're casting the same spell twice to essentially get advantage on the check, you still expend 2 spell slots or focus points or whatever, you know? So this is a very powerful effect. And it's level 18, so it makes a lot of sense. And it's one of the things that makes the Chrono Mage really cool. So this is the Chrono Mage. They got a lot of spells. You get a lot of spells when you pick it up. I'm sorry I couldn't quite go into each of them. This video is already probably going to be pretty long. I can't tell at this moment, mostly because I had to reread a few things a few times just to make sure. And I've been taking some weird cuts in this one. I hope you all enjoy. I think I'm losing my mind doing all these videos. But the Chrono Mage is really cool. It's a very fun archetype that has a very strong theme. Oh god. Towards time and time magics, you get access to time-based domain spells, which I think is really cool. And honestly, this is the perfect archetype if you want a time-themed character. Is it a very strong archetype? Not particularly. You get access to some focus spells, and like the spells you get from not Chrono Mage Secret, but the other one, just adds to what spells you can pick up in your spell list. Overall, a lot of the other effects, besides maybe some of the endgame ones, are not that powerful. But if you want to make a time-based character, and if you want to add an interesting twist to your character, this is something that would be very interesting. If you're a fan of Critical Role, Caleb would probably pick the Chrono Mage archetype dedication for his character, adding on top of his fireball wielding wizard, extra time spells added to the list as well. I think that is very cool, very interesting, and we're going to be done with Chrono Mage for now, but Chrono Skimmer comes up tomorrow, and I'm very excited about this one. It's a very interesting archetype dedication, so be on the lookout for that, click that. Sorry, it's over here. Click the subscribe button, maybe the bell too. Don't mind the finger, it doesn't know what it's doing. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.